Hello, this is Abby from OllieHolly.com. In today's video, I will be showing you how to crochet this poisonous mushroom ornament. This ornament works up fairly quickly and is a great stash buster. This mushroom ornament is also extremely versatile. Just change up the color of the embroidery and the tops and you can use it for different occasions. These ones over here are the mushrooms I use to decorate my Halloween tree with. The purples and pinks work really well with the rest of my Halloween ornaments. And I made these ones here for my Christmas tree last year. I had a bronze and teal theme going for my tree, so these looked amazing on the tree. So pick a few of your favorite colors and let's get started. To make this ornament, you will need yarn in 3 colors of your choice. You will need one for the stem, one for the cap, and one for the embroidery details. For these mushrooms, I use Shine Sport yarn from We Crochet. To make the yarn easier to see in this video, however, I'm using Paintbox Yarn's Cotton Aran. For the stem, I'll be using the color Pistachio Green. For the cap, I'll be using the color Slate Green, and for the accent color, I'm using the color Buttercup Yellow. You will also need a darning needle, a stitch marker, a pair of scissors, some polyfill stuffing, and a crochet hook that corresponds to the weight of your yarn. I'm using a 3.25mm crochet hook to go with my Aran weight yarn. Also, because this piece is quite small, a chopstick to help with stuffing will be handy for this project. Before we get to the pattern, if you are completely new to crochet, please go through the Amigurumi playlist for beginners before you proceed with this one. I will do my best to make this video as easy to follow as I can, but I will not be going over the basics in detail. If you need a refresher, the videos in that playlist will also help. I will link it in the description box down below and up here as well. Also, the single crochet stitch I will be working with in this video is the X stitch, or the yarn under single crochet stitch. To work the yarn under single crochet stitch, insert your hook into the stitch, and instead of yarning over to draw a loop up, we're going to be yarning under to draw a loop up. You should have 2 loops on your hook. Then yarn over to draw through the 2 loops on your hook. If you would like to see the difference between the standard single crochet and the X stitch, and learn a little bit more about the X stitch in general, I have a dedicated video tutorial and I'll link it in the description box down below and up over here as well. And if you would like to follow along with a written pattern, you'll find the free pattern on my blog. The first part we will be working on is the stem of the mushroom. To start, we will need to make a magic circle. To make a magic circle, start with the tail end of the yarn on the palm side of your hand. Wrap the working end around the tail end, going around 2 fingers to form an X. Flip your hand over and insert your hook under the right strand and over the left. Pull the left strand under the right strand, then turn your hook up towards you to form a loop around your hook. Yarn over with the working end of the yarn and pull it through the loop on your hook to complete your magic circle. If you need a refresher for the magic circle, I have a more dedicated video tutorial and I'll link it in the description box down below and up on the right hand corner as well. In round 1 of the stem, we will be working 6 single crochet into a magic circle. So I'm inserting my hook into the magic circle, making sure that my hook is going underneath both the circle and the tail from the magic circle. Then I'm yarning under and drawing a loop up. I now have 2 loops on my hook. To finish this single crochet, I'm yarning over and drawing it through the 2 loops on my hook. Now that I have 1 single crochet, I just need to make 5 more for a total of 6 stitches. I'll go over the yarn under single crochet one more time here. So I'm inserting my hook into the circle, making sure to go underneath both the circle and the tail. Then I'm yarning under to draw a loop up. And then I'm yarning over to draw it through the 2 loops that are on my hook. So here I have 2 stitches, and now I'm going to work my 3rd, my 4th, my 5th stitch, and my final stitch of the round. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then I'm just going to pull on the yarn tail to close up my magic circle. In round 2, we will be increasing into each stitch. So what that means is, we'll be working 2 single crochet into the tops of each stitch from round 1. Doing this should double our stitch count from 6 stitches to 12. So into this first stitch here, I'm going to work my first single crochet. I'm inserting my hook underneath both legs of this first stitch, yarning under to draw a loop up. Then I'm yarning over to finish a single crochet. I'm placing a stitch marker in the first stitch to mark the first stitch of my round. I like to do this to help me keep track of where the beginning of my round is. Then into the exact same stitch, I'm going to be working my second single crochet stitch. So into that same space that my first single crochet is coming out of, I'm going to insert my hook and work my second single crochet stitch. Then I'm just going to continue working 2 single crochet into each stitch for the rest of this round until I have a total of 12 stitches. So into that second stitch, I'm working 1 and 2. Pause here to work the rest of this round, and I'll meet you at the beginning of the next round. For rounds 3 and 4, work 1 single crochet into each stitch. You will not be increasing, so your stitch count for both rounds will stay at 12 stitches. Pause here to work both rounds, and I will meet you at the beginning of round 5. In round 5, we'll be working a single crochet in the first stitch. Then we're going to decrease. Then after that, we'll repeat working the single crochet and decrease 2 more times for a total of 3 times this round, before ending the round off with 3 single crochet. So that's 1 single crochet, then I'm decreasing. And to decrease, I'm just inserting my hook through the front loops only of the next 2 stitches. So into this next stitch here, I'm going to insert my hook through the front of the stitch and out the center. Then into that next stitch, I'm doing the same. Then I'm just going to yarn under to draw a loop up through both of those front loops over there. Then I'm going to yarn over and draw it through the 2 loops that are on my hook. You'll see that my 2 stitches have now been condensed into 1. Then we're just going to repeat working 1 single crochet and decrease. Then 1 single crochet and decrease. Then into the final 3 stitches, I'm just working 1 single crochet into each stitch. Your stitch count for this round should be down to 9 stitches. And to keep the yarn tail from the magic circle from getting in the way, I'm going to tuck it into the base of the stem. In round 6, work 1 single crochet into each stitch. Pause here to work the rest of this round, and I'll meet you at the end of the round. Before we can move on to round 7, lightly stuff the bottom of the stem with some polyfill. The opening is going to get narrower after this round, so it's a good idea to stuff this part at this point. And if you find that the opening is a bit too narrow, you can use a chopstick to help with stuffing. You don't need to use too much stuffing, but you do want to stuff it a little bit so that the shape doesn't just collapse when it's handled. In round 7, decrease 3 times back to back, then work 3 single crochet. Your stitch count for this round should be down from 9 stitches to 6. So I'm decreasing the first 2 stitches, making sure to go through the front loops of both of these stitches, and then just working my single crochet. So that's my first decrease stitch. Then my second decrease stitch over here, and my third and final decrease. And you'll notice that because the decrease stitches are right next to each other, it makes this area a little bit tighter and harder to crochet. Just do your best to maneuver your hook through the front loops to decrease neatly. Then in the final 3 stitches, just work 1 single crochet into each stitch. Because we're reducing our stitch count to 6, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to work around this round. Like I said before, do your best to maneuver your hook into the stitches. In round 8, we will be working 1 single crochet into each stitch. But instead of working through both loops of the stitch, we will only be inserting our hooks into the back loops of each stitch. So right here, you can see that each stitch consists of 2 loops. For this round, I'm inserting my hook through the center of the stitch and out the back. So I'm inserting my hook into the center of the 2 loops and out the back, going under only one of the loops. Then I'm going to yarn under to draw a loop up. Then I'm yarning over and drawing it through the 2 loops on my hook. Continue working into the back loops only for the rest of this round. And because we only have 6 stitches to work with for this round, the stitches are going to be really close together and it's going to be really tight. So make sure you're working into the correct stitches as you are working this round. Pause here to work the rest of round 8 and I will meet you at the beginning of round 9. In round 9, start by working 1 single crochet into the first stitch, then increase into each of the next 2 stitches. After that, work 1 single crochet into each of the final 3 stitches. Your stitch count should go up from 6 to 8. So into my first stitch here, I'm working 1 single crochet. Then into the next 2 stitches, I'm going to be increasing. So an increase in this stitch here. It's 1, 2. Then into that third stitch, I'm going to work another increase. So that's 1 and 2. Then into the final 3 stitches, I'm just working 1 single crochet into each stitch. For round 10, we'll start off by working a decrease stitch. So I'm inserting my hook through the front loops only of the next 2 stitches. Then I'm just completing my single crochet. Then work 3 single crochet. So that's 1, 2, and 3. After that, work a decrease stitch. And finally, end the round with 1 single crochet. The stitch count for this round should be back down to 6. In round 11, we're going to start working on this part of the mushroom. To do so, work an increase stitch into each of the front loops of this round to double our stitch count from 6 stitches to 12. To work into the front loops only, I'm inserting my hook through the front of the stitch and out the center. Then I'm just going to work an increase stitch into this front loop. Pause here to continue increasing into each front loop. You should have a total of 12 stitches by the time you are done with this round. In round 12, we'll be alternating between working 1 single crochet then increasing, repeating that all the way around until you have a total of 18 stitches. So that's our 1 single crochet. Then we're increasing into that second one. Then we're just going to repeat working 1 single crochet and increasing all the way around. Pause here to work the rest of round 12, and I'll meet you at the beginning of round 13. In round 13, start by working 1 single crochet into the first stitch and increase in the next. Then we're going to be repeating the following a total of 5 times. We're working 2 single crochet, then increase. And we're just going to repeat that until we get to the second to the final stitch. And in the final stitch, we're going to work 1 single crochet. Your stitch count for this round should be 24 stitches. So I'm working 1, increase, then I'm going to alternate between working 2 single crochet, so that's 1, 2, and increase. So I'm just going to repeat that all the way around. So that's 1, 2, and increase. Pause here to work the rest of this round, and I'll meet you at the end of the round. And finally, into that final stitch, I'm just working 1 single crochet. In round 14, we're just going to alternate between working 3 single crochet, then increase into the next. So that's 1, 2, 3, then into that 4th stitch, I'm going to work an increase stitch. Then I'm just going to repeat that all the way around. Pause here to continue alternating between working 3 single crochet and increasing all the way around. You should have a total of 30 stitches by the time you are done with this round. For our final round of the stem, start off by working 2 single crochet. So that's 1, 2, then we're going to increase in that 3rd stitch. And from this point on, we're going to repeat the following a total of 5 times. Work 4 single crochet, then increase. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, then increase. Pause here to continue working 4 single crochet and increase, repeating that until you get to the final 2 stitches, and I'll meet you at the end of the round. Into the final 2 stitches, we're just going to work 1 single crochet into each stitch. You should have a total of 36 stitches by the time you're done. After finishing round 15, cut the working end of the yarn and pull your hook up to fasten off. With the help of the chopstick, lightly stuff the remaining space in the stem. Thread the tail onto a darning needle and work a seamless join in the round to create a cleaner edge. To do so, I'm inserting my needle through the 2nd stitch of the round. So that's 1, 2. I'm inserting in from the front and out the back and pulling through. Then I'm inserting my needle through the center of the final stitch and out the back. And before I weave my tail in, I'm just going to adjust the tension of this final false stitch here to make sure it blends with the rest of the edge. Finally, I'm going to weave the tail in. If you find that you're having a hard time pulling your needle through, you can use a pair of pliers to gently help pull the needle through. Then I'm going to cut off any excess yarn tail. Next, let's crochet in the stem ring. Starting with the slip knot of your stem color on your hook. Insert your hook into the exposed front loops from round 7 of the stem, which is this line right here. In round 8, we worked into the back loops only, so the front loops from round 7 are exposed. I'm taking my hook with the yarn already attached, and I'm inserting my hook into that first front loop. Make sure you're only going through the loop and not through the body of a stitch. So into each front loop here, I'm going to be increasing. There are 6 exposed front loops, so you should have a total of 12 stitches by the time you are done with this. Pause here to continue increasing into each front loop, and I'll meet you on the 4th or 5th loop to show you how I crochet the tail from the slip knot into my work so that I don't have to sew it in. To sandwich this tail into the back of my stitches, I'm going to lay this tail along the exposed front loops and over the working end of my yarn. And I'm just going to hold it in that position so that when I crochet, it gets sandwiched into the back of my stitches. So into the next front loop, I'm inserting my hook and I'm making sure that my hook is going under the tail. Then I'm going to draw a loop up and yarn over. And when I yarn over, I'm making sure to go over the yarn tail. Then I'm just going to continue working the rest of the stitches around this yarn tail to sandwich it into the back of the stitches. You should have a total of 12 stitches by the time you are done, so make sure to count your stitches before you fasten off. Cut the working end of the yarn and fasten off. Seamless join in the round for a nice clean finish before weaving the tails in. Cut off any excess yarn tails as close to your work as possible. Set the stem aside for later. We'll be crocheting the cap to the flappy part of the stem in a little bit. Next, let's work on the cap. With the color you've selected for the cap, work 6 single crochet into a magic circle. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then just pull on the tail to close up the hole from the magic circle. In round 2 of the cap, alternate between working 1 single crochet and increasing, repeating that a total of 3 times. You should have increased your stitch count for this round from 6 stitches to 9. So into this first stitch, I'm working 1 single crochet. Then in the next, I'm going to increase. Into the third stitch over here, I'm going to work 1 single crochet. Then into that 4th stitch, I'm going to work an increase. And finally, for the last 2 stitches, I'm going to work a single crochet into this stitch here, then increase into that final stitch. In round 3, we're going to start off by working 1 single crochet into the first stitch, increase in the second, then we're going to alternate between working 2 single crochet and increasing, repeating that a total of 2 times before ending the round with 1 single crochet. So into this first stitch, I'm going to work my first single crochet, then I'm going to increase in that second stitch, then I'm going to work 1 single crochet, 2 single crochet, then increase. Then I'm just going to repeat working 2 single crochet, so that's 1, 2, and increase. Then into that final stitch, I'm going to work 1 single crochet. So into that final stitch right there, just working 1. You should have a total of 12 stitches by the time you are done with this round. In round 4, alternate between working 3 single crochet and increasing, repeating that a total of 3 times until you have a total of 15 stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, increase, and then just repeat working 3 single crochet and increasing 2 more times until you have a total of 15 stitches. You can pause here to work the rest of this round, and I'll meet you at the beginning of the next round. In round 5, start off by working 2 single crochet, then increase in the 3rd stitch. Then alternate between working 4 single crochet and increase, repeating that 1 more time after, before ending the round with 2 single crochet. You should have a total of 18 stitches by the time you are done with this round. So that's 1, 2, increase, then we're going to alternate between working 4 stitches, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and increasing. So we're increasing into that next stitch there. Then just repeat working 4 single crochet and increase 1 more time. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, increase. And into the final 2 stitches, we're just going to work 1 single crochet into each stitch. So 1 and 2. In round 6, start off by working 1 single crochet, then increase in the next. So 1, increase, and then we're going to alternate between working 2 single crochet and increasing. We're going to repeat that a total of 5 times all the way around before ending this round with 1 single crochet. So that's 1, 2, increase. So just continue alternating between 2 single crochet and increasing all the way around until you get to the final stitch. Pause here to work the rest of this round, and I'll meet you at the end of the round. Into that final stitch, I'm just going to work 1 single crochet for a total of 24 stitches for this round. In round 7, alternate between working 3 single crochet and increasing. Repeat that a total of 6 times all the way around. Your stitch count at the end of the round should be 30 stitches. Pause here to work round 7, and I will meet you at the beginning of round 8. In round 8, start off by working 2 single crochet, then increase in the 3rd stitch. Then alternate between working 4 single crochet and increasing, repeating that a total of 5 times all the way around. Finish off the round with 2 single crochet. You should have a total of 36 stitches by the time you are done with round 8. So I'm working 1, 2, increase, Then I'm just going to alternate between working 4 single crochet and increasing, repeating that a total of 5 times. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, then increase. Pause here to work the rest of round 8, and I will meet you at the end of round 8. And into the final 2 stitches, I'm just working 1 single crochet into each stitch. For round 9, we're going to be working through both the cap piece and the stem piece. So I'm just lining up the first stitch of my cap piece to the false stitch created by the seamless join in the round from the stem piece, which is that stitch right there. Once your stitches are lined up, insert your hook into the first stitch of the cap and also through the false stitch on the stem. For this round, we will be alternating between working 5 single crochet, then increasing. We're going to repeat that a total of 6 times, working all the way around through both pieces. So that's our second stitch there. Three, 4, 5, then increase. Pause here to work the rest of this round, but do not fully shut the opening. I will meet you towards the end of the round when you have about an inch of a gap left. We will need to stuff the mushroom lightly before we close off the opening completely. So as you can see here, I've left about an inch of a gap here so that I can stuff the top of the mushroom. Before you stuff the piece, make sure you fluff up your polyfill stuffing. I'm also going to pull my loop up and remove my hook so that it's out of the way. Then I'm going to lightly stuff the cap side of the mushroom. I'm going to try to concentrate most of my stuffing towards the cap instead of the stem. If you stuff a little bit too much towards the stem, your mushroom is going to look a little bit too tall. So I'm just going to do my best to keep all the stuffing in this cap. You do not need to stuff your mushroom very fully. I'm just stuffing mine so that the shape retains itself when the ornament is being handled during embroidery. Now that my mushroom is properly stuffed, I'm going to continue working the rest of round 9 to seal up this hole here. In the final round, we're starting off by working 3 single crochet, then increase in the next. After that, we're going to alternate between working 6 single crochet and increasing, working that a total of 5 times all the way around. To finish the round off, we're working 3 single crochet. You should have a total of 48 stitches by the time you are done. So that's 1, 2, 3, increase. Then we're just going to alternate between working 6 single crochet and increasing. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, increase. Pause here to continue alternating between working 6 single crochet and increasing, and I'll meet you at the end of the round. So into the final 3 stitches, we're just working 1 single crochet into each stitch. You should have a total of 48 stitches by the time you are done. Now that we're done crocheting, you can cut the yarn tail and fasten off. Thread your yarn tail onto a darning needle and work a seamless join in the round. Insert your needle through the second stitch and out the back, then back into the center of the final stitch and out the back. Then weave the tail in underneath the cap. If you're having a hard time pulling the needle through, you can use a pair of pliers to gently help pull the needle through. For this piece, I wanted to hide the tail even more, so I'm threading it into the body and out the flappy part of the stem. Then I'm cutting the yarn tail as close to the piece as possible. Then I'm squishing the mushroom to hide the tail. Now that all of the crocheting is done for the mushroom, we can finally move on to the embroidery. The first part we'll be embroidering in is the gills. With a very long strand of your accent color threaded onto your darning needle, locate the gap that is between round 10 and 11 of the stem. So that's where we started to flare the stem out to create the flappy part of the stem. So that's any of these 6 gaps here. For the purpose of making this easier to explain, I'll be calling these gaps the base gaps. Insert your needle into any of the base gaps. Then trace a line along the stitches stacked on top of the first stitch that's coming out of this base gap to where the stem and the cap meet. Thread the needle out through this gap. I'll be calling these gaps where the cap meets the stem the outer gaps. Pull your needle almost all the way through to hide the tail. Make sure to not pull it out all the way. You just want to make sure that the tail is safely hidden underneath our work over here. Insert your needle back into the same base gap we started in to create the first line. Then count 2 stitches to the left from your first outer gap and thread your needle out through that gap there. So that's 1, 2, so we're coming out of that gap right there. Pull your yarn all the way through, but make sure to not pull too tightly or you'll pull the tail out. Repeat that one more time. So I'm inserting my needle back into the same base gap. Then I'm counting 2 stitches to the left of the outer gap of the gill. I'm threading my needle out through that space there and I'm pulling through. And for the final gill line of this set, I'm inserting my needle back into the same base gap and I'm going to thread my needle out the next base gap to set up for the next set of 3. There should be 3 gill lines coming out of the base gap, and each gill line should have 2 stitches between the outer gaps. For the next set of 3, just trace this stitch here all the way up to locate the outer gap to thread your needle into. Instead of threading the needle back into the base gap, We're going to thread our needle out the next outer gap and pull through. Then we're threading our needle into the base gap and out the next outer gap. And finally, we're going to go back into the base gap and out the next base gap to set up for the next set of 3. Just repeat this until you have 6 sets of 3 gill lines, giving you a total of 18 lines. For the final line, I'm going to thread my needle into the base gap, and I'm actually going to have it come out of the cap to set up for the dot embroidery because I have enough yarn left over. So I'm inserting my needle into the base gap, and I'm going to thread the needle out between rounds 3 and 4 of the cap to set up for the embroidery of the dot design. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it's going to be between these 2 rounds over here. So I'm just inserting my needle into the base gap, then I'm doing 1, 2, 3, 4. So right here, so any gaps between 3 and 4 at this point, then I'm going to pull through. To embroider in my first dot, I'm going to insert my needle into the next gap here. Then I'm going to insert my needle back into the same spot my yarn tail is coming out of, and I'm pulling through. So I'm essentially just embroidering in a very short line. To make this line a little bit puffier, I'm going to double up on it. So I'm inserting my needle into that next space that I worked into previously. But instead, I'm going to thread my needle out of the next dot's position to set up for the second dot. So here I'm just going to eyeball where the next dot should be. And we're just aiming for 4 evenly spaced dots for the first round of dots. So now that I've picked my spot, I'm just going to insert my needle through and pull my yarn tail through. Make sure to not pull too tightly because you want these dots to look a little puffier to add texture to the cap. If you find that you've pulled it a little bit too tightly, you can insert your needle underneath the dot and wiggle your needle around to loosen the dot a little bit. Pause here to work the next 3 dots. The spacing between each dot does not have to be perfect. Mushrooms are wonky little guys, and having the dots not be super evenly spaced out will make it look a little bit more rustic. For the final dot of the first round, I'm going to insert my needle out between rounds 5 and 6 to set up for the next 4 dots. The next round of dots will sit between the first 4 dots between rounds 5 and 6. Pause here to work the second round of the dots. Finally, for the third round of the dots, we'll be embroidering them in between rounds 7 and 8 of the cap. Just like before, we're doing 4 dots, and these dots will be sitting between the dots from the second round. Pause here to work the final 4 dots. To hide and secure your yarn tail, thread your tail through the body of the mushroom and out of the stem. Then take your scissors and cut the tail as close to your piece as possible. Then squish the stem to hide the tail. To make your mushroom into a hanging ornament, you can string a piece of thread through the top of the cap and tie a knot to create a loop. Thanks for following along with this video. If you'd like to see more video tutorials for amigurumi, please consider subscribing to my channel. You'll also find free amigurumi patterns on my blog. Follow me on Instagram to see updates on what I'm working on, and if you ever make anything from my videos, feel free to tag me on Instagram. I'd love to see your work.